Good morning, Stampers. Today we're going to be making a hybrid card. A hybrid card is a combination of traditional card making techniques with paper and punches and ribbons and embellishments, along with a digital method. Today I'm using my digital studio along with the brush stamp set called MDSWatercolorTrio, and I've used it in my digital studio, the latest version. I have actually created my card in my digital studio, and then instead of printing the card out, I exported it to a JPEG file and printed it that way. And now I'm just going to go around and cut out the design I want to make for my hybrid card. I actually put a frame around this with a little bit of pear pizzazz so that I could see my cutting lines to cut out the shape exactly that I know will fit on my hybrid card. And I used Concord Crush, pear pizzazz, and I used only those two colors. And even though it looks like I may have used some Sahara sand or something like that, I just used the intensity gauge after I put the flowers on there to change it to lighter or darker than what the actual ink pad is on my digital studio. And then I used the birthday wishes from the same digital set and did that in Concord Crush. Now you can see how that looks just as if I had stamped it with a stamp set. It's nice and smooth. I printed them out on Whisper white paper. You can do about 5 of these to a sheet if you want to do like a whole sheet of Whisper white on your printer, and then just cut them out to the size that you need for your project. Now this is the card we're doing today. The digital studio is what printed the artwork, and everything else will be cut from paper stock, which gives it a nice hybrid feel because you've got some handmade and then some from my digital studio. So this is the actual card, and we're going to be practicing this technique today of making this scallop border punch using the corner, because this is pretty tricky, and it all depends on what size you cut your starting piece of paper as to whether or not these corners are going to come out exactly right. On my website I have a list of what sizes you can cut this. There's a German Stampin' Up! Rep who has come up with all the dimensions, and today we're using 3 13/16 by 4 3/4. And what you want to do when you're using this corner punch is you want to use it sort of like a corner rounder. You're going to stick it in here into the corner, but the key element is to make sure that you do not pass this little ledge. If you see, there's a little ledge here that the card can rest against, and that's very important that you don't go past that ledge. But yet you still need to see the back of it so you can make sure you're getting the corner down as far as it should go. So just make sure you butt it up against the edges just like you would if you were using a corner rounder, and make sure your point comes down into the center, and then just punch away. Now I have found that this corner punch has a little bit of an issue in that right here in the center this little piece doesn't want to fall out whenever you do your punching. So you might need to have your hobby knife handy to reach in and grab that little piece each time, because if you don't get it out, your next punch won't be exactly correct. So get it into the corner, but make sure you don't go past the 2 little stops to hold the paper square. Punch away. Okay, once you get all 4 corners punched, then you're ready to do the sides. And if you use the correct dimensions, then it should line up exactly perfectly. We'll do this side first because it lines up exactly with the silver markings on the punch. And the key to making sure that it comes out right is this little square showing the square part of the paper. That's more critical than where the little circles are. So when you put it in there, make sure that you're getting these little corners lined up here and here, because that is more important than the little loops. And once you get it in place, just hold it with your finger and punch. And you see that it came out just right. And just go around the edges doing the same thing. On this side it won't be, you'll have to do it in pieces. So you'll start with the corner, And making sure over here that your little loops line up with the loops on the very far end. And then you're just going to move it over and line it up just as you would if you weren't doing the corners. Line it up. Make sure your little corner right there is lined up with the silver. And punch. Okay? If you end up with a little scraggly edge here, you can always take your paper snips and snip it off just a little bit. And then just go on around the corner. Now, when you're finished with your punching, we're just going to mount my Digital Studio artwork, which I have arranged to make sure that it fits right into this scallop square, leaving an 1/8 inch. So we're just going to adhere that with a little bit of snail. This isn't very heavy. This will be a nice card for mailing because it's hybrid, so it's not real thick. And we're just going to center that right there on our scallop piece. Okay. And we're making this on a card that opens portrait way, like this, which is different and unusual, makes it not to be the same boring thing every time. We're mounting the cardstock, Designer Series cardstock from the 6x6 pack of In Colors. That is a free hostess item with your 150 order. You can get this instead of a stamp set. You can get this paper pack. And we have cut our designer paper at 1 7/8 by 2 1/2. And our white backing for that is cut at 2 5/8 by 2. And as you can see, I've already run mine through the Xyrons just so I don't have to sit and put snail on the back of everything. Makes for a little bit quicker process. And I'm just going to mount those pieces. And now I'm ready to mount my composite piece of my designer paper with the white backing on the front of my card. And these are going to leave about an 1/8 inch border around the outside of the card and approximately 1/8 inch between each square. I'm using the Xyron repositional adhesive just in case I don't get it quite right. I can peel it back up because you want your edges to line up exactly right or it will make it look distorted. This is one time when you need to be really exact with your trimming. Okay. And then if you use your Xyron, just make sure you kind of rub the edges because the way the adhesive peels off on there, it kind of has a little bit of adhesive that hangs off the edges of each individual piece of paper. Alright. And now we're ready to mount our scalloped artwork to the front. Now, if you want to put this in the mail and you don't want it to be too thick since we're putting this ribbon on here, you might possibly want to just glue this down instead of putting it on with dimensionals. If you're giving it in a gift as an enclosure card, I would pop this up on dimensionals to give it a little bit of depth. But since we're going to be mailing this card, we're just going to put some adhesive on the back and just stick it down. Okay, now we're going to do our ribbon similar to what we did last week on our card. We're going to use a piece of double sticky tape. You can use sticky strip, or as I'm using here, score pal tape. And I wanted the width of the scallop to the scallop edge about 5/8 of an inch from the bottom of the artwork. And I want to have the glue not hanging over onto my purple part. And I'm just going to use the purple polyester or the Concord Crush polyester ribbon. And just doing like we did before, if you go ahead and cut your ribbon, you'd want to start in the middle and go out. But since I'm using it straight from the spool, I'm just going to start with my edge and just start scrunching it up as I go along. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's not supposed to look like it was done on a sewing machine. You want to just go up a little bit, down a little bit. It's just scrunchy, scrunchy, scrunchy all the way. Once you get it looking the way you want, go ahead and trim off And this is polyester ribbon, so it does need to, it will fray slightly, so you do need to cut it at an angle. Okay, and then we're just using some of the adhesive pearls from Stampin' Up. These come on a little sticky strip, and I'm just going to pull off a couple. They already have the adhesive on the back, and I'm just going to stick one on each end of the ribbon. Okay, so that's our finished card front. I also, on my digital studio, since I already had this graphic done, I just went in and made it lighter. When I printed it, I told it to print lighter, not 100%, on regular pure white inkjet paper, just regular paper. To make an insert, since this card is so dark, you would have to write on it with a white pen. If you make an insert like this, you can just put it in with some Dotto or snail, write your sentiment on it, and that way you won't have to use a white pen. You can just use a regular ballpoint. And that's our hybrid card for today. Enjoy!